I was working in a hospital as a young nurse. It was an old building, but it had recently been renovated. We had just finished our shift change report when the night shift nurses came in. The new nurse took over my patient load. The patients were elderly, and most of them had dementia. As I walked past one of the rooms, I heard a blood-curdling scream. I stopped in my tracks and listened intently. There was a knock on the door, followed by the scream. Knock, scream, scream. I remember thinking, what the hell? Then I shrugged it off and went about my business. Every time I passed that room, I heard the same thing. Knock, scream, knock, scream. It continued like that for a few days. I didn't think much of it until one of the night shift nurses told me about the patient in that room. Her name was Mary, and she had schizophrenia. She would always hear voices and see things that weren't there. She hadn't hurt herself or anyone else in the hospital, but she was extremely violent at home. She would smash every mirror and window she saw, so they had to move her into a padded room in the hospital. She didn't like being in the hospital. She wanted to go home. Every night she would scream and thrash around in her bed. She would rip out her IVs and bang her head against the bed rails. The staff had to restrain her every night to keep her safe. One of the doctors said that Mary used to be a normal person before she developed schizophrenia. She was married and had kids. She lived in a big house with lots of windows. One day, she started hearing voices telling her that the government was out to get her. She tried to call 911, but they told her that they would send someone to help her. No one came to help her. And eventually, she smashed all the windows and cut herself. That's why she had to stay in the hospital. The new nurse finished his shift, and the next day shift nurse came in. She was nice and always wore perfume. It smelled like lilies. One day, while I was getting a report, I asked the day shift nurse what the patient in room 208 had done that night. The day shift nurse was new, and she didn't know Mary's story. She said, "Oh, she trashed her room again. But we found out that if you put her old picture frames around the room, she calms down." I looked at the clock. It was 6:30 a.m., and I had to get to my floor, which was 2 floors below. So I grabbed the picture frames and headed to room 208. As I walked past the room, I heard the knock. I rolled my eyes and went inside. The patient was sitting up in bed, staring at me. "Who are you?" she asked. I could tell that she wasn't wearing a gown or restraints. I didn't think that the night shift nurses had restrained her. She must have been up the whole time waiting for me. "Hi, I'm one of the nurses," I said. I handed her the picture frames. "Can you help me hang these around the room?" She nodded her head slowly and got out of bed. I walked behind her as she went to the closet. She opened the closet door and hung the pictures. I stared at the closet in disbelief. It was filled with old, dirty clothes and shoes. There was no way that she had hung those pictures all by herself. I turned back to her, and she was gone. I called out for her, but there was no reply. I ran out of the room and searched the whole floor for her, but I couldn't find her anywhere. I finally found her sitting in the corner of the hallway. She was rocking back and forth and mumbling to herself. A doctor came by and gave her an injection, and then he brought her back to her room. After that, I never heard a scream or a knock ever again.